Mike Oquaye and chairman for this occasion, my colleague in whom sometimes I'm pleased but certainly not today, the majority leader, deputy minister, and doctor, I should thank you for those warm introductory words. Chairperson of the Electoral Commission, I was sharing a pleasant joke with Dr. Charles that I used to be an associate here, not in the standing of Professor Mike Oquaye, but at least as your policy expert with the Institute of Multi-Party Democracy. So it's nostalgic coming back to the IEA to discuss matters of constitutional review. I should thank Professor Mike Oquaye and in particular the IEA for the invitation. You know, in days where Professor Oquaye was speaker, once the honorable majority leader agrees to something to his right, then accidentally or coincidentally I'm to the left, I agree. Mike Oquaye made it law. He will let it pass because he has built consensus. So I intend today that I will emphasize, after a brief introduction, areas to which we can appear as a country to have built consensus. And then we can proceed on it. But with an assurance to this gathering that an overhaul of the 1992 Constitution remains an imperative and is compelling. And therefore, it is my strongest view that we should walk the talk and go beyond the rhetorics of everyday discussion of constitutional review. Many countries over the world have attempted constitutional review. Some have achieved remarkable results. The success story of the Constitution of the Kenya Review Committee, which happened in 2010, can guide us. But since the birth of the 1992 Constitution on 7 January 1993, there has been no shortage of calls for reforms to be made to some of its provisions. Yet over the past 3 decades, there has only been one major successful amendment to the Constitution, which was in 1996, among other things, which allowed citizens to still retain their citizenship even where they acquired citizenship of another state. Apart from that, all other attempts at constitutional amendment have either stalled or failed. Professor Chairman, mine is that beyond what Professor J.E.A. Mills did in 2010, putting together the Fiajo Committee to look at the 1992 Constitution and the way forward, what we should be doing now as a country is to constitute a constitutional review implementation committee co-chaired by the president and any other respected person in Ghana of good democratic standing who would help the president work the processes, whether it is entrenched or non-entrenched. Then arguably we can begin to give meaning to aspects of our constitutional review process. Members of this Constitutional Implementation Committee can be drawn from academia, civil society, political parties, experienced jurists, former speakers of parliament, former seasoned members of parliament, 1 or 2 surviving members of the Constituent Assembly and the Constitutional Review Committee can still provide some useful experience. I believe that is the way we should be going. Now, as I said, I intend to guide the building of consensus. So where I agree with the majority leader, the emphasis will be mine. So I'll pick a few constitutional articles he has referred to and emphasize it for our purpose. Currently before Parliament, we are assessing and evaluating Supreme Court judges for appointment to the Supreme Court of Ghana. pursuant to the present mandate under Article 144 of the Constitution. As leader rightly referred to, Article 128 provides for a minimum of 9, no maximum. My contention is we should have a maximum of 13. From President Rawlings through President J. Kufuor, through late Atam Mills, through John Mahama, we have stayed within. So for the first hearing, the same Constitution in 128 through 129 provides for 5, and it can be extended to 9. But because the Supreme Court is not bound by its decision and can review its decision, you can expand from 5 to 9. So if you add some 4 to 9, you get 13. So you can even do a judicial review with a maximum of 13 Supreme Court judges. And I think that as a country, we should have a maximum ceiling. We should not leave it at the level where any president can come. And be assured that if my president comes today, I'll encourage him to populate the Supreme Court. I will. And when you ask what he is doing, I'll say it's consistent with the Constitution and his powers under the Constitution. So, leader, I'm at idem with you on that. Now, for emphasis again, I pick again, leader, for us to build consensus. Article 78. Ministers of state shall be appointed by the president with prior approval of parliament. Maximum majority of ministers should come from parliament, so 50 plus 1. So when even we are assessing members of parliament who are nominated ministers and non-members of parliament who are nominated ministers, like my accounting professor, Tuya, who is now Deputy Attorney General, the attitude is different because he's already an elected member of parliament, having been recognized by the president. Can you even disqualify him? If you disqualify him, are you disqualifying him not even to be a member of parliament? Because if he is disqualified legally and you think it's fatal that he cannot be minister, then that person cannot be member of parliament. Because to qualify to be minister, you must qualify to be member for parliament. So read 94 well, and probably we would need to look at it. My view again, Speaker Chairman, is the number of ministers. And I think that one of the reasons why the 1992 Constitution needs a review, I'm sharing my experience as a lawmaker and as former cabinet minister, is Parliament's failure to hold the executive accountable and Parliament's failure to allow for a semblance functional operation of separation of powers and checks and balances. Wherever the Constitution has given the power and mandate to Parliament, Parliament have failed this republic. And by Parliament, I mean from 1993 to yesterday. And we have failed because of intense partisanship, excessive partisanship. I'm sure leader didn't want to tell you when he said he's become a fire tender or fire officer this morning. This morning, I decided to file a motion of censure on the Minister of Finance. Interestingly, I started my journey yesterday, and he was adequately informed by 2 p.m. yesterday that I will invoke Article 82. This morning, I saw members of his party amounting to 80, whether he calls them rebels or coup makers. Take the wind out of my sleeves that they supported. What they didn't know is that they have encouraged me that I can now get the minimum threshold to unseat and exit the Minister for Finance. But probably I hesitated because of it. But what makes it imperative for this evening meeting is that I understand that none of the 80 is a minister. So it means if we are on our own, we can be on our own as members of Parliament. And we, to the extent that we are independent and autonomous, we can function well. Now, two, the fear and respect of the president by members of Parliament. So, back to my argument, I sincerely also think that this country must run with a maximum of 65 ministers. I don't think that the elephant size of the government from 2017 to 2020 was acceptable anyway. Neither do I think that previously those expanded numbers. And those of you who are legal experts, you can examine, as leader attempted, Article 79 well, where it says that there shall be a cabinet constituted by the president, the vice president, and not more than 19 ministers. So you say 19 ministers with their deputies. So I'll even increase it to 20. So that's 40 ministers. If you add regional ministers, you are somewhere around 50. Then the president, at his pleasure, can appoint other ministers. But you see, that one, it is parliament which has failed. We should tell every president that don't exceed this ceiling. But we haven't done that. So whether that requires a constitutional amendment or not may not be an issue if Parliament was authoritative enough and exercised and knew its weight and might to say that don't bring us any number other than 65. Probably others can even reduce the number, and if Parliament was strong and firm. So when I hear President say that they are mindful of public purse, that mindfulness must reflect in the size of government, my strong view. When you say I'm mindful of public purse, that mindfulness must reflect in the size and composition of government. And then again, Professor Chairman, I agree with leader, but I want to take it on a different route. He refers to Article 195 of the Constitution, where the President appoints chief executive officers of state-owned enterprises. He works with the Constitution even if he's in Zambia. I don't have my copy. But if you read 195 well, it says the President shall appoint them in consultation with the governing council. That has never been respected by many presidents. You are there and you hear that a chief executive officer has been appointed. The chairman of the board and the governing council is even unaware of it and is asked to ratify it or asked to support it, or he himself has been asked to go home if he disagrees with the president. So Article 195 needs a review. But again, is it an amendment or the president respecting the letter and spirit of the law? It says do so in consultation with the governing council. And those of you who have studied corporate governance, let the board be the appointing authority and not the president. If even the president, he should only do so on the advice of the governing council. So that would be my disagreement with you on 195, and I think that we can build consensus on that. Now that leads me to another area where the nation can build consensus. If he reflects his party view and I reflect my party view, will be Article 187. The Auditor General, he says he's to be part of Parliament. But before I address that, let me address a significant issue again leader raised. Ghana's asset declaration regime, who does it serve? Who does it serve? And for what purposes has it been helpful to our country? Until civil society tested the law, even on the Auditor General in court, probably the essence of an asset declaration regime was to match income to property acquisition and to allow for a process where we can make a determination that assets so declared reflect the earnings and commensurate income of the person. So our asset declaration regime have not helped Ghana's quest to fight corruption. And therefore, if we want to succeed in our journey on making corruption a high-risk activity, a complete overhaul of our asset declaration regime becomes necessary. It is my considered view that probably we should behave like the United Kingdom. Even when it comes to declared assets, we should go for reverse burden of proof. If we find you have property and assets and gold bars bigger than what you should be earning, you must prove. It shouldn't be the state we should prove. You must prove how you got that income. So if you wake up and we find 6 million cedis in an account of a minister or an MP. Which earning can give you 6 million? Which earning? Which earning? Yet you are comfortable and proud that you have millions in your account. Where is that money come from? It can only come from loot, safe on justified grounds. That's why the Constitution says that office of profit, so that we know that you are earning additional money from some engagement in other economic commercial activities to which you are entitled to those earnings. So I share leaders' view that our asset declaration regime needs a comprehensive review. National Development Planning Commission. Even as we speak today, Ghana. Labor, take labor. We want to know what human capital we want to develop for our country. Therefore, we should be able to do a focus. In the next 10, 25 years, what category of persons is Ghana training? Are they in the sciences? Are they in the areas of innovation? Or they are your traditional history, religion, and philosophy of our universities, which has not changed? We must ask that question. And therefore, the National Development Planning Commission should be able to do an economic focus and tell us what our labor market needs will be, and for our universities to reflect it. So I think that the National Development Planning Commission, where you have ministers of state serve it, I agree with him again that let's review the Constitution, make it independent. And then I like to emphasize this. Recall that again, between 2010 and 2016 under the National Democratic Congress, at least when the Constitutional Review Committee set up by President Mill sample views from Ghanaians nationwide on the operation of the 1992 Constitution and on the changes that need to be made to the Constitution, the government issued a white paper. So we ask ourselves, beyond the white paper, what happened? Again, Parliament, you see the presidents, each of them come, deliver State of the Nation address, no comment on constitutional review. That amounts to no commitment to constitutional review. If in your State of the Nation address, you don't hint at it, rather, and don't even provide an elaborate roadmap as to what you want to be able to deal with it. Now, Professor Chairman, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Ghana has been touted as a torchbearer of democracy in Africa, and particularly in South Africa. We've become a beacon of hope. In spite of this, Ghana's score in the World Democracy Rankings have seen a sunk, as is dismal record in recent times show. For example, the Economist Intelligence Unit 2020 Democracy Report places Ghana in the basket of flawed democracies, now ranking 6th in Sub-Saharan Africa and 56th best in the world. This is a significant drop from the country's 2017 record of 4th in Sub-Saharan Africa and 52nd place worldwide when the MPP assumed the reins of power in 2017. The Democracy Index provides a snapshot of the state of democracy for countries worldwide. Again, VDEMS 2021, the Liberal Democracy Index, classifies Ghana as the 5th best in Africa and 52nd best internationally. This too represents a drop from its 46th position in 2017. Again, in 2022, reported a downgrade of Ghana from a liberal democracy to electoral democracy over the years. And again, we should be concerned. The citizens in whom sovereignty rests, are they happy with us? Are they satisfied with us? Are we ourselves not, with our performance, undermining their faith in democracy and its associated dividends? So, the second probably significant attempt to address the election date of 7th December. You remember when we tried changing the name, chairperson of the Electoral Commission, you are here. Sometimes you see the political class, when he's in government, some things he's happy with. When I'm in opposition, some things and I'm happy with. The reverse is equally true. when in opposition, I see some things right, and he doesn't see them right again because he's in government. Part of Ghana's being why you need a constitutional amendment. Now, the other attempt at constitutional amendment was under President Nana Addo Dankwa 2018-2019, which was an amendment to Article 2431, introducing multi-party elections and politics at local government level. And get it right, the NDC supports the principle of an electoral MMDCS. What we have problems with is probably one, who will supervise that election? And when I say who will supervise, when you undertake assembly elections, it's supervised and paid for by the state, conducted by the Electoral Commission. If you make it competitive on party lines, your monetization, which has characterized MP election, may also be introduced at the district level election, and that can undermine the decentralization devolution agenda. But in principle, we share the view that it should be elective. Whether it should be on party lines or it should just be ordinary Ghanaian with the pretense, we pretend that is independent, you also can look at that option. But there is a significant national security question there, Professor Chairman, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, that I like to pose. But I hope that I'm not misconstrued tomorrow on this code. If you take some districts, because of ethnic diversity in those areas, the political parties, to promote inclusiveness, have tried to share member of parliament with DCA with some other social groups. I could give you several examples. Now, if you go on the elective principle, some other groups may never ever get elected to the DCA position. That can undermine the unity and cohesion and the national security of those areas. Probably, Chairman, to give you one example, take Gushegu. Gushegu, the ethnic composition there. You have the Gombes, you have Kukumbes, you have dominant ethnic groups. Sometimes the MP is this ethnic group, the DC is from the other ethnic group. If you are not careful, one group will feel left out. That inclusiveness, an amendment to Article 243 must find a way to address it for some minority groups to still get recognized. Speaker, Chairman, we just returned from IPU, where you used to lead us. Ghana is doing well. Speaker Bagbin have benefited from some of the work we did collectively with you in Uganda and Kenya, as now president of CPA, with the gentleman to your right now representing the CPA. Again, my good friend, the leader of government business. Again, Uganda and Kigali praises itself that they are doing well with gender. And Professor, again today, Speaker Bagbin was talking about affirmative action. Little did he know your effort at Fiesta Royal to get it passed. It hasn't passed. Yet we say we believe in gender inclusiveness. It requires an amendment to the Constitution, because our Constitution says no person shall be discriminated against on the basis of gender. So the men, the women, that's why there must be affirmative action, because we cannot discriminate favorably to you when we don't have an affirmative action legislation in place. But to the success of Kigali, Rwanda, Uganda, it has worked for them having what you call proportional representation. And they appoint other persons to their parliament. So for instance, we could also amend the Constitution and decide that each region shall send 2 women to parliament. We can. And that will increase the number of women in public political life and public decision-making process. But you cannot do so without tinkering with the 1992 Constitution, which says that don't discriminate on the basis of sex. But I share the view that we have to promote more gender inclusiveness in our democratic practice and in our democratic journey. Moderator, as I assured you, I don't intend to match the majority leader with how much time he has spent. I'll give him some headache elsewhere to compensate for the time. So in conclusion, to avoid the historical development problem of fluctuations and truncations in plans and projects initiated by previous administration, first, Article 86 and 87 must be amended to have a binding force on whoever forms the government of the day. That is in respect of the National Development Planning Commission. There was call even for an independent emoluments committee. We also should not abandon that particular effort, given how much of the country's money go into compensation. Finally, let me conclude with Parliament. Again, when we all say that Parliament is the controller of the public purse, Parliament controls the budget, a constitutional myth. Because every other day, Speaker Oquaye, as you remember, even you'll be holding a calabash looking for the Honorable Minister for Finance to see how much help he can give to Parliament as an autonomous institution. So when you say that Parliament controls the budget, how do you control a budget and you behave like a toddler who is lactating for the mother's breast? A constitutional myth. But I agree again with Leader. When you look at the tenor of Article 179 and the provisions of the budget in respect of the Auditor General and the judiciary, it says that when the Chief Justice submits the budget of the judiciary, the words there says without any revision. But there has always been a revision by successive president. Is that a breach of the Constitution, or is because we don't have enough adequate resources? I thank you for the opportunity.